Okay, sharing screen. Okay, so welcome back everyone to class 7 in our 10 class series. And before we start today's lecture, I'd like to tell you guys about what's going to happen in the 10th class, which is we're going to have a tournament and there's also prizes. I think I showed you guys this a couple weeks ago, but there's there's prizes for students that play top 3. So like chess boards and chess sets that you can bring home and keep. Yeah. And I think first place has a chess clock too. So yeah, that's an incentive to um play in the tournament. Yeah. Basically, I think the tournament is gonna be based on like guys, I think you guys are fine. If you guys came to all the classes, you should be good. Yeah. Okay. So let's get started with this week's homework. Oh, okay. So, yeah. So this was problem 1. And um okay. So what would you guys say is the best move here? Okay, F8Q. And then what happens after I go here? R here. I'm sure this is fine. Oh, RH4. Okay, I see. And then I take. Yeah, RH4 checkmate. Okay, interesting idea. So this is actually kind of a bait that I set up. Of course, it works. This is a very obvious move, right? But what if I told you there's a faster way to checkmate? See, this goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get 5 moves before checkmate. Um, I can checkmate in just 3 moves. Can you guys find a way? Do you guys have an idea for how to mate in 3? I'll give you a hint. This pawn controls this square. Any ideas? Okay, next hint. One more hint. If this bishop was missing, I could play rook h4, and this is mate in 1, right? So what's the move, guys? Okay. I don't know if like audio is broken, but I'm sure it's fine. I'll just tell you guys. So there's actually two ways to do it. Firstly, you can do the fancy way and just take the bishop, check, and then he takes back, right? You remove the defense of this square, and then you checkmate, right? Great. But you can also do it like just overwhelm this square because there's only one piece defending it, and you have two rooks that can go there. So you can go rook h4, and then he trades it off, but you still have checkmate, which is great. Yeah. Okay. So that was the first problem. Second problem is probably a little bit less bad than the first one. Like this, and that. Okay, so white to move again. What was the move you guys played here?
B-A-3.
B where?
B-A-3. A3.
Here?
A3. A3. B-A.
Here? Okay.
A3. A3.
Yeah, F6. Okay. Yeah, just be careful because this is 6. F6 and then yeah, because okay, it's fine. BF6 is right. What happens if I take back? What happens if I take back on F6? What would you play now?
NE7.
Yeah, this works. NE7 is checkmate, right? Because you control all of black squares. There's also knight F6, also checkmate. NE7 is completely fine. So is NF6. Yeah. And then the idea is, so now that I take here, if black doesn't take back, instead he decides to like, I don't know, like try and defend checkmate by, let's say, moving his knight out, then I can just run away and then see. Now my pieces are like, I'm just up a piece. I just got to take this bishop for free, essentially, which is good. Yeah. Okay. That was pretty good. Next is like what we talked about last week. Okay. White to move. What's a play?
KC3.
KC3? I don't think KC3 is right. Because if you play King C3, he goes here. And then what? R where? RF2? I'm hearing RF2, RB2. RH2, RG2. Okay, I don't think any of these are right. Here. Okay, here's all the answers I have right now. Yeah, okay. Okay, I think this is good enough. I'll explain them one by one. So first, let's go. If you check him, remember your rook kind of creates like this box for the black king, right? So if you check him, then the king gets to run this way. You see, you expand the box for him. Right. So it's like your rook controls like these two boxes, right? So you always want the black king to be in the smaller box. So we never let him choose which box he can go into because he'll always pick the bigger box. Um, Similarly, that's why rook f2, g2, and h2 don't work because you're just making the box bigger for him, right? Right. Okay. Rook c6 does work because your king controls these two squares of the box. So if I essentially, this is like a waiting move, I do not make any major changes to what I'm controlling. I wait one move. Now it's your turn. Now I have to go back king a1. Now I can go rook c1 checkmate. Because before I couldn't go rook c1 because you just take, right? But now that I force your king to a1 with rook c6, then I can go back and deliver checkmate. Okay? Yeah. Good job. Okay. This is the last position. Again, white to play.
QF2.
Where?
QF2.
QF2 is unfortunately stalemate. Yeah. So this is one of two traps that I laid out in this position. Any other ideas?
QF1.
King F1. King F1 is the second trap that I laid out. Because King F1, you also control this square with your king, right? So this is also stalemate. Notice how the king is not in check right now. So any other, I think that I've run out of traps. So any other move you guys make should work. Yeah. We've already established QF2 and King F1 don't work. Remember my goal when I want to checkmate with queen and king is I want to get my king to like one of these three squares. So I can put my queen here. And you probably shouldn't do it by like walking in front of your pieces. Any ideas? I think there's a lot of moves, a lot that work here. Okay. I think in the interest of time, also tell you guys the answer to this one. So our goal is to get the king here, right? There's two ways to do it. Actually, there's a lot of ways to do it. But like if you want to go by the formula that I taught you guys, we want to get our king here, but we don't want to go king f1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the queen, around our own queen. And black can't do anything. He just stays here. So we just march around our own queen, and then we can deliver checkmate now. Okay, that's number one. Number two is we can make it so that we can change the position of the box that the king is closer. We can go queen g4. He goes king h2. And now we can just put our king here. You see, it's kind of like similar to the other position, right, that I was telling you guys about, this one. But instead, like the queen, now instead of these two squares for black to move, we give him these two squares. And like the king is here. So yeah. So, and then no matter what black does, it's checkmate next move. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about pawn endgames and how king and pawn endgames. So generally, if you trade off a lot of pieces, oh, what the heck? Interesting. Never seen that before. So generally what will happen if you trade off all like your pieces, all of these four pieces, is you'll be left with king and pawns. And although it may look like very complicated, you see there's a lot of pawns on the board and it's very hard to like calculate. Um, it'll actually, I promise it'll actually be easy because pawn end games are broken down by like six or seven just simple rules that you guys can follow. And I'm going to teach them to you guys today. Okay. The first one is called opposition, which I will not ask you guys to like try and demonstrate, because it's kind of complicated. So it works like this. When two kings are in front of each other, I want opposition, as in I want to make the move that puts me in front of the enemy king where there's only one square between us. And the reason I want to do this is because, look, now he has to move away. And I get to move my king up. Essentially, I gain space over him if I get opposition. This is opposition. There's a square in the middle of you. It works with three squares, right? Because I can go one. Oh, sorry. It works with three squares. If I make the move that puts three squares in between us, one, two, and then again, still opposition. There's also diagonal opposition, where no matter which way you go, all right, I will still give you opposition. And there's also rectangular opposition, which is just like elongated rectangular opposition. Sorry, elongated diagonal opposition. So like similar strategies. Everywhere you go, I can always claim opposition. Now, the question you're probably asking is, Vincent, why does opposition matter? And let me show you right now. So a position you might find yourself in is when you have a king and a pawn. Okay, so let's actually look at this scenario from Black's point of view. So, so white pawns, I'm just going to draw this arrow, are going down the board this way, okay? So if they essentially get to the back of the board, they promote and you lose because as we know, queen and king versus king is a one position for white. So in this position, I'm going to put my king back a bit. If it is white to move and I make this move, I have opposition, right? So black has to move his king out of the way and I'll follow suit. Now what black doesn't want is for me to like is to go here, right? Because then my king controls all of the squares his king controls. So my pawn can just essentially run down the board for free, right? So when I do this, right, he steps away, I go up. He's going to put his king back in front of it. And then I can claim opposition again. So I put my king in his king. And then his king moves to the side. And eventually I get to the end. And at this point, I can move my pawn a couple times. And now look, I have in this position, I have opposition one more time. So he has to move away. Now I control all the squares until my pawn's promotion, which means I can just move it down the board, promote it into a queen, and you guys know how to win this position. Yeah. So that's the power of opposition. I get to force black to move. Essentially, black has no other choice but to give up these three crucial squares that he can never let my king get to. But what if black had opposition? So black makes the move that puts the kings together. And then let's say black, sorry, it's white to move now. White, he has choices, right? He steps aside. Now black maintains opposition. And this could go on forever. Or white could push the pawn, in which case I put my king here. The reason I put it here is because the white king cannot gain opposition on me because it cannot step on its own pawn, right? So, and then as white pushes, I back off. I just back up a square. It's fine. King F5. And then I'll take opposition again. Opposition, opposition, right? You just keep taking opposition until he advances the pawn. And then see, this is fine. It's here it's okay to back off to here because he can't maintain opposition. Again, these king and pawn end games, they're all about opposition because nobody has like there's not a lot of long-ranged pieces, so you have to make sure that you retain valuable squares. And eventually, this game will end in a draw because this is stalemate. The pawn controls everything. King supports the pawn. King controls the rest of the squares. Stalemate. Now we see if it is white to move in this position, it's a draw. If it's black to move, white wins. So the only thing that made the difference is that it was black's turn at the start, and that's opposition. Okay. So yeah, so that was quite a lengthy statement about opposition. So now we're gonna do something fun. Yes. Okay. Okay. So now is the next part. We're gonna talk about Zugzwang. So in this position, if you were white, you want to take black's pawn. How would you do it? What would you play here as white? Guys, what would you play as white in this position? You want to take black's pawn and then promote your own pawn. King e6. Okay. But as black now, I play king c5. What do you play as white? You can't play king d6 because I'm controlling it, right? And let me tell you right now, there's no good move for white. Any move loses. This is Zugzwang. This is the place where if you wanted to skip a move, it's like, sorry, where if you were allowed to skip a move, you would skip a move, right? I would say pass in this position because it's just not good for me. And this is also the reason that, you know, let's think about it again. So look, I control black square, so this is the only square that he can defend his pawn from. Black also controls, there's only one square where I can defend my pawn from. Whoever moves first from this position loses. Okay, so if it was black's turn right now, he would lose. He would have to move away. It's very similar to opposition in the way that if you move away, then after is, someone takes, sorry, if you, no matter where I go, I lose because like it just depends on whose turn it is. Neither side wants to have to move right now. And that's where like the you have to move rule of chess really sucks in these positions. Okay. So let's go back to this position. The idea is that whoever puts their king on this square first loses. How can we make black put his king on that square right now? Any ideas? Yes, king e7. I heard it. King e7. Now black, he has to defend his pawn. He has one square to defend his pawn from. And that's like the trapped, poisonous, mind, whatever you want to call it, square. And then I go back. And then I win. Right. Yeah. Good job. Good job. This is Zugzwang. And it does not always have to look like this. Like in particular, you could have like this position where, let's say it's like this, where I'm like controlling this square, right? As black, I don't want to move, but in this position, I have to move because I have no other choice. So I have to give up my pawn. This is Zugzwang. It's like Any move you make is a bad move. Yeah. Okay. Um, let's talk about passed pawns now. So in king and pawn endgames, we see that like pawns decide everything, right? Even if you're up just a single pawn, then you have like the advantage, like an inconceivable advantage, might I add. Because if firstly your pawn is an outside pass pawn like this one, what would you do as white here? Just give me a game plan, not like any moves. Just tell me what would you do as white?
A5.
Yeah, a5, and then as black goes to chase your pawn, suddenly his pawns are undefended, right? So you're just gonna come and eat these. So that's why these outside pass pawns are so good, because you can attract your opponent's attention. Like it's not like he can choose whether to care or not. He has to care. Because if he doesn't care, this pawn's gonna reach the end and become a queen. So he's forced to move this way, give up his pawns, and lose the 2v0 on this side. And eventually it'll end up in a position like this, and your pawns are just completely passed. Now, speaking of passed pawns, I'd like to, I know it's a little much, but I'd like to talk about something called the square of the pawn. It's not nothing complicated. It's just a helpful tool to determine whether I can catch this pawn or not. So let's say it's like this. White to move, black's pawn has a square. Essentially, it's like this. Let's count. 1, 2, 3 moves before it promotes. 1, 2, 3 moves outwards. And this is the square of the pawn. If my king can move into this square every move, I will catch this pawn. So like this, this, I caught the pawn. Similarly, like this, it draws this square, right? So then here, 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 I'm well within the square, but if I was here, I cannot catch this pawn no matter how hard I try, right? Because it's just one move out of reach. Okay, so that's the square of the pawn. And let's test. Okay, can white catch the pawn? There's 3 moves until promotion. I'll count the moves out for you. You can catch it? No, you can't catch it, right? Because if you look at the square, if I can't get into the square this move, I can't catch it. So he's just a move out of reach. What about now? Can I catch the pawn? Say yes or no. Just say yes or no.
No.
Yeah, no, you can't catch it because you're out of this. Now you're out of this side of the square. You can't make it into the square in time. Okay. What about now? Let's do this. Can I catch the pawn?
No. No.
Wait, you can catch the pawn, right? Because look at the square. So I move into it this turn, and I keep moving it into it every turn, and I end up catching the pawn. Okay, what about now? Can I catch it?
You can no. No.
No? Do you guys still think I can't catch it?
I got it.
Yeah, you can catch this pawn.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you can catch this pawn, right? So, okay, all right. Let's see. What about here, like this? Can I catch the pawn?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's well within the square of the pawn. I can catch this pawn. Okay. Let's see. Last question. Can I catch the pawn?
Yeah. Yes.
This
Yes.
is a trick question, guys. Remember, what can the pawn do on the when it's still here? Oh, sorry. Um, yeah, I messed up. What about now? Can I catch it now? You can definitely catch it if you're here because it's white to move. You just take it. What about now? Can you catch it?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
What would you play?
What do you do? You like to just move the king on the side. Okay.
King here, right?
Yes.
But look, my pawn's still here. I can go 2 moves forward and suddenly I escape you guys. The answer is the answer is yes here. You can catch the pawn. But what you need to do is back off first, and then now you catch it. You anticipate the 2 moves. Remember, pawns have 2 moves when they're on the start, right? They can go like this or like this. Okay, so that's square of the pawn. And now let's talk about breakthroughs or like passed pawns in general. So passed pawns in king and pawn endgames are very important. They're important in every single endgame for a reason. Look at this. This is a connected passed pawn. And what you'll see is that these connected passed pawns are very strong because let's say black has a singular passed pawn over here. The interesting thing here is that although we have the same number of pawns, each of us have two, who would you say is winning in this position? Who would you say wins in this position, black or white?
Ah.
Hmm. The answer is white, right? Because, well, actually, it's not that obvious, but yeah, good guess. Black, I remember I did tell you guys about outside pass pawns, and it looks like black's gonna win. You know, he advances the pawn, and then he goes for white's pawns, right? But notice what happens if he ever steps to go to attack this one. He exits the square of my pawn, so I can just start running and then promote. So he can never leave, he can never go past this line, right? So if you see, I can't go past this line. So which means my king is constrained here and I get infinite time to just run back and then gain opposition and then force you back and then take this pawn and win the king and pawn endgame. Yeah. Okay. So these connected passed pawns are very good. What's even better is these passed pawns like this. And the reason these passed pawns are so good is because they support themselves. Even if the king went to here, the king cannot take this pawn because the king is, you see, if I were to take this pawn, I exit the square of the pawn and I push my pawn all the way to the back rank and I promote. So the square of the pawn is like kind of like it's not a major player, but it definitely helps, you see, because like the king cannot go past this rank because then it will leave this, it will not be able to catch my pawn as it runs. So I'm gonna tell you guys, the hierarchy of passed pawns. We have the connected passed pawns. Firstly, at the very bottom, we have passed pawns like this. And then we have outside passed pawns, which are far from like where your kings are. And then we have the connected passed pawns like this. And then we have the double passed pawns like this, double connected passed pawns. And these are at the top. They're the strongest because not only can you win with them, like just directly, they give you infinite time, lock the king up. Even if the king gives up a little bit of ground, you can immediately seize advantage. And now look how Black's king can literally cannot leave this box. If it leaves this box, he cannot. And that's very sad for Black. So you can just have infinite time, go take all his pawns. Okay, that's past pawns. And now you may be wondering what happens after I take his pawn. And we've seen how white can win in this scenario with opposition, right? Where you have like this and you like push him back. Two pawns is even easier. You just like slowly push him back, right? I'm sure you guys can do it like on the dot, on the spot, sorry. Eventually, as you get towards the end, you want to give up one of your pawns. Put your king on a7. This position is very important in a lot of king and pawn endgames, where you have like the king controlling all three of the pawn's last squares. Essentially, if your king gets here, your pawn is basically set for promotion. Okay? Yeah, so what you can do is you can just give up one of these pawns, promote it to a queen, and we know how to win this endgame. So I will go into more depth on how to win pawn v king and like rook, knight, knights and use how like knights and like up a pawn in like knight endgames, etc., etc. Because we don't have the time for that right now, unfortunately. Yeah. So just take a mental note that always when you're up a pawn, actually when you're up any material, always play to the end, okay? Because it's like you have the winning chances, you have the advantage. So you should always try your very best to win before if you like seriously you cannot win, then it's probably not your fault and it's okay to like take a draw in that scenario. Okay. Okay. We have finally reached the fun part of king and pawning games, which are breakthroughs. So let me show you a position. In this position, white and black's kings are very far from like this like massive pawns. So as white, I'm going to tell you right now, you can win in this position. Although it doesn't look like it. 3v3 on pawn, you can win. So yeah, what would you guys play as white to win? C6? C6? Yeah. One of the ideas is that if you ever play, like push one of these pawns, I can kind of lock up a position. Firstly, I can take it, you're forced to take back, and then I go like this. And notice my king is closer to your pawns than your king is closer to mine, right? So like, look, I can kind of like block you as you try and run up, and then I go take your pawn, and it's GG's because you're down a pawn. This is unwinnable. Okay. So C6 is not the answer. It is a good try. Yeah. Any other ideas? B6. Okay, B6, what happens if I take like this? It's not B6. I'll tell you right now, B6 is the right move, but it's not taking back. And you can't go to F6.
C6. This is not
Yes, C6. C6 is the right move. So congratulations to whoever found that. This is a very hard move to find. And I'll explain how it works. So C6, what you're doing is you have two threats right now. Firstly, I'm threatening to take your pawn. If you do not take back, I will promote, right? Now look, there's nothing in the way of this pawn. Sorry, if you take back, there's nothing in the way of this pawn. There's no way you can stop this pawn from promoting. If you decide I'm going to take your other pawn, I have my other threat. I'm going to take this pawn, and again, I'm super close to promoting. There's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to promote. Okay? So C6 is the right move. And let's say black instead took with his C pawn first, then we would play A6, right? Similarly, we play A6, and then we push the pawn to the bottom of the board, promote for checkmate. And this is one basic example of breakthroughs. I promise you, I will have a lot more on the homework, but I just want to give you guys a few tips instead for breakthroughs since we have no time to cover it in class. Tips for breakthroughs. Firstly, look at every move. Every move, it might work, it might not work, but you want to look at all of them. Because there's not a lot of them. Secondly, think of ways to create passed pawns. Like after B6, we notice this pawn has nothing in front of it. So what if I get rid of its only defender? I can promote. Okay. So two main principles when solving breakthroughs. One, look at every move. Two, look for ways to create passed pawn. I promise you it works. That's the best way to solve breakthroughs. Okay. And yeah, let's talk about an even funner topic than breakthroughs. It's gonna be pawn races. So who can tell me if it is white's move right now, who can tell me who wins the game? Right, remember black pawns go this way and white pawns go this way. So who wins the game here? Wait, no. Wait, who is winning here? Black or white?
White.
I heard a combination of both. So the answer is black. Because look, I drew the arrows for who reaches the bottom first, right? Whoever's closest to the bottom rank will promote into a queen and win. And if you notice, even though it is white's move, black still makes it in time first. And for his last move, he makes this a queen. Sorry, he makes this a queen. He can stick it in front of the pawn and win. Yeah, so black wins because you see his pawn is just closer from the start. And I want to say the best way to it's just a matter of counting. It takes white 5 moves to promote. Black only takes 3. And it's absolutely okay if you're doing like the calculations for this position. You take your fingers and you count each individual, like 1, 2, 3, or you point at them while you're thinking. It's okay to do that. Like as long as you're not like disrupting your opponent, of course, but it's okay to do that if you're trying to calculate how many positions, how many pieces. Sorry. Oh, how fast whoever's gonna win, like how fast it takes each pawn to get to the bottom of the board. Okay. Next question. So, right? So let's do the same exercise again, but it's slightly different this time. Again, pawns move like this. Who wins the game? Black? Okay. So let's think about it. So how many moves does black need?
Three.
3. What about white?
Four.
Yeah, 4. So you think white's gonna promote one move after black. So that is what happens. White does promote one move after black. But what do you do now? Right? You promote, right? But look at it. Notice anything wrong? Anything wrong with black's position? Nothing? What if I draw this? Is there an issue with black's position? Yeah, you're in check, so you have to move, right? And no matter where you move, I take this piece. It's free. Right? Yeah. Again, I promote. Yeah, so this is kind of like another tricky problem that comes from pawn races. Is you also want to see if you promote with check. So I'm going to give one more example of pawn races. So pawn races are fairly simple. They work like this. Whoever gets the end of the board first gets to start checking the other piece, king, and eventually win the game. There's also some scenarios where you have like queen versus pawn, and this is somehow a draw, right? Like these like queen versus king and pawn situations. There's this, but yeah, there probably won't ever happen to you guys. So just one last thing. King and pawn endgames. Um, it's not only who promotes first, it's also because like, if this wasn't check, I would start checking you, right? Just start like check, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But since it is check, now you have to move your king. Now I can check, right? I can start checking you. So I get like the tempo if I can check you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's all the content I wanted to cover for today. So I'm going to do a probably like 5-minute review because this is kind of very long. Okay. So firstly, today's topic was king and pawn endgame. And what we did was, firstly, we talked about opposition, which is like there's an odd number of squares between you and black's king. And black now has to move away. He has to concede squares. And now you can like, now you get more squares. And eventually you can have him concede to like the end of the board, right? Okay. Secondly, we talked about like the importance of opposition in king and pawn endgames. I'm going to quickly review. If it is white's turn right now, it's a draw. If it is black's turn right now, black loses. So that's very important. It's like it's just a matter of whose turn it is, not even like material anymore. And that's kind of crazy. We talked about Zugzwang, where it's like you want to make your opponent go to somewhere they would never go. In fact, I make him step into like basically this square. Now look, he has no moves left. So I get to just take it. This is Zugzwang. Again, it's like the state where I don't want to move. I want to pass. But I can't pass because like that's not in the rules. So I lose because I have to move. Okay, so we talked about Zugzwangs. And then we talked about breakthroughs. Oh, sorry. No, we talked about pass pawns first. Um, pass pawns. Pass pawns work like this. Pass pawns are essentially tools to distract the opponent's king, keep the opponent's king locked up. And this is the hierarchy of pass pawns. First are normal pass pawns, isolated pass pawns that can't like they create space for you because you can play around them and then, like take your opponent's pawns, right? There's also outside pass pawns, which are better because they allow you to just completely pull your opponent's king away. So you get free reign over his remaining pawns. And then there's the connected pass pawn, which is like it kind of you don't even need to defend it with your king anymore. It's just the enemy king's just stuck defending this one pawn because it's connected and he can't go for the base of support because then you can just run your pawn. And finally, we have double connected pass pawns, which is like he can't even like leave like these two squares because the second he leaves this square, I just gain more space, and now there's a smaller box for his king. Okay. Okay, that's past pawns. And then we talked about breakthroughs, which is basically like we try and checkmate our opponent by using only pawns. We sacrifice some of them, we clear the way for others, right? And then we can eventually get to the bottom of the board. And finally, we talked about pawn races. And this is essentially where two pawns are racing each other to get to the bottom of the board first and start delivering checks and hopefully prevent the other pawn from becoming a queen. The way you do this is you can count how many pieces are in front of each other. Okay. And with that, if you can master all like 6 or 7 of the techniques I just taught you, then you can officially call yourself um, king and pawn endgame masters. So you will have mastered the art of king and pawn endgaming. Yeah. So I know I went a little fast, and this week's homework is going to be long because we have to like ensure you guys like are trained on all of these things that I talked about. So sorry in advance, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, um, uh, wait, what? Let me stop my share. Oh, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Okay. Well, I'll just say to the recording then, but if there's any questions or um anything that you guys have trouble on or any like positions that you want me to take a look at and perhaps solve, then yeah, just leave a comment on the YouTube. It'll be great. Yeah. And if you're like unclear or stuck, also watch the YouTube. Okay.